Edge Match. It's Edge Match. You're at Edge Match. Edge Match. Don't miss Edge Match. Don't miss Edge Match. You're at Edge Match. Edge Match. Don't miss Edge Match. Don't miss Edge.
Hi, all you Edge Matchers out there. We are here for another one of our amazing launches by one of my favorite people who I feel like professionally we're kind of like soul sisters. So all of the things that Ilene says are just go straight to my heart. And so I'm so excited to be here to do the launch of Finding Your Pathway to Belonging, her newest book, the second book that is a follow-up to her first book about belonging as well. And this one, I had the privilege of going through it and reading it the first time, and even being a very small contributor to her book. And people, this resource book is something you definitely want. So I'm so excited for Ilene to talk about that today. So if there's anybody out there, I feel like a lot of our EduMatch family is very familiar with your work. But if there is somebody out there who's not, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for that wonderful introduction, Mandy. I do feel that we are connected in so many different ways. I'm Dr. Ilene Winokur, and I am, of course, an EduMatch author, podcaster. My podcast is called Journeys to Belonging. I've been an educator for more than 25 years in the elementary levels, and also at the pre-college intensive English course level, and retired in 2019 and started blogging about my experiences of living in Kuwait since 1984 and how I found a sense of belonging there and back at home in Buffalo, New York, where I grew up. And through social media, I've met amazing educators like Mandy, like you, and so many others, and wanted to share this whole idea of belonging, which is so related to social emotional learning. And so I wrote the first book, Journey to Belonging, Pathways to Wellbeing, published by EduMatch in 2021, and felt that there were a few sort of ideas, resources, and things like that in that book. It was more a narrative. And I wanted to be able to offer more resources. So that's why I wrote the second book, but I know we're going to get into it in a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's me. So yeah, I'm so excited to be able to bring this book to life. It has so many wonderful contributors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like your book is one of those books that I specifically remember reading, and we had met a couple times at that point, and I felt like I loved your, everything that you said online, but I remember specifically reading your book and going, what this woman has the craziest life story, and so and in the best way, like just the the experiences that you've had and what you've taken from those experiences and learned from them. And how much it has to do with belonging. I mean, it was like, I feel like in some ways your experience with belonging throughout your lifetime was very, because you changed cultures, was like very in your face. Like, like you could not get past it. Like it was something you had to deal with. And from that standpoint, I love your story. Like I love learning through you that way. So I highly recommend Journeys to Belonging as well. And you could definitely use these books separately, but I think that background information and Journey to Belonging is so important to understand the importance of this book as well.
Right. And also the connection is that in Journey to Belonging, I mention the different types of belonging that I found along my journey. And so having that in-depth sort of narrative that in those chapters in Journey to Belonging is really helpful. As you said, you don't have to buy both books, but I do think, and I agree with you, that it's really nice to have that sort of inner story, the inside story.
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched on this a little bit. Was there anything you wanted to add to that? Like, what really was the inspiration behind writing Finding Your Pathway to Belonging? So we touched on Journey to Belonging a little bit, but what else?
Right. The real inspiration was seeing how educators are struggling within their schools, within their classrooms, with their students, just professionally, to find that sense of belonging, to find that sense of safety, especially the psychological safety that they can be themselves, that sense of not feeling the overwhelm as a result of really having that self-confidence, self-efficacy in their profession, and also within the realm of the school that they're working in. And I wanted to be able to explain this whole idea of belonging because, again, it's become another buzzword in education, just in general. And so understanding that belonging is not trying to fit in, as Brene Brown talks about, but actually being that person that makes you feel happy. So when you wake up in the morning, and you're going to work, you feel happy about going to work. And it's sad to hear so many educators who got into education because they loved it and they wanted to be that teacher for their students, and have now found themselves either disappointed in themselves for whatever the reason, or just unhappy because they're not valued and their work is not validated by either their colleagues or the people around them. Oftentimes, unknowing to the others that they're doing this to them. So I wanted to lay out some resources, and I also wanted to include contributors from my PLN, educators who have so much to offer in the realm of belonging and social emotional learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know how I feel about all of that. Like I 1000% agree with everything that you say. Mm-hmm. And I think that in some of these areas of SEL, it's really difficult because, some of the things that I see that are frustrating to me are like when we see memes that say something like a student who is dysregulated cannot learn. And that's all the meme will say. And that's frustrating to me because I think to myself, we talk about these topics in very short bursts, like memes. And all it does is lend itself to making educators feel guilty. And because at the end of the day, why are we there? We're there to get students to learn, to love learning and to want to learn. And so telling us that we can't if they're dysregulated is unhelpful. Right. Like we as long as we have that information, great. But then we need to move into what do we do about it? And I think that your book does that. Like your book does some of that. If you want to foster belonging, if you want to go through some of these, sometimes abstract, things to do to help with emotions and to help with your identity and belonging, which are all linked. Right. Like, how do we do that? And then you give people that next step to those memes.
Right. And I requested actually that I have the preview copy of the book. I don't know if you could see it because of the blurred screen.
Oh yeah.
But the book is workbook size, because initially I thought of it as a workbook, but it didn't end up being a workbook. It ended up being more of a resource and a guide to teachers, a hands-on. This is the way. These are some lessons. These are activities that you can do. These are easy things that you can adapt to your own situation, to the age group that you're teaching, to the ways to motivate your students. And I follow a template which I can show you. Let me share my screen really quick. And yeah. So this is the general lesson plan template, and it's built on the backward design. For those of you who are aware of the backward design, basically you start with the big picture and then you really hone down to the activities. So, but included in it is this whole idea of what is the connection to belonging. So it's even a template that for lessons that teachers are doing in their own classrooms, they can use this template. And then what's the driving question, or what's the overarching idea that you really are trying to get to in terms of the sense of belonging? And if there's an assessment, because it doesn't have to have an assessment, what is that? Could even be just a personal assessment on the student's part. And then what is the activity? And so, this template is used throughout. And I really like it because it makes everything more consistent. And so within the pages, I have lessons that I created and I used in my own classroom when I was teaching. And also based on, like, for instance, I have in the very beginning, how to create a safe and welcoming environment. Because if once you walk in that door of the building, actually, not even just your classroom, but of the whole building, you need to feel that sense of belonging. And you can sense it when you walk into a building. It doesn't matter whether it's a business or it's a school. And so some of the things that I have in the book are activities like creating class norms, how we use culture and language objectives, as well as academic objectives with students, letting them know about that. What is an asset-based approach? And Valentina Gonzalez contributes a really, really nice sketch note on that. For self-belonging, things like how do we use literature to help students feel that sense of self-belonging and to reduce that amount of negative self-talk that really reduces their ability and their motivation. Things like journaling, how to focus on ourselves, things like gratitude, which you contributed, Mandy, through activities, and Noah Daniels, what's in a name, which is something that she talks about online a lot when she does that project. It's really amazing. And if we're talking about identity and really getting to know ourselves, our name is really who we are. So it's really important. Yeah. And then for personal belonging, there are things like community building, family, classroom, neighborhood, local, and global, using literature such as types of families, and the classroom as a family, which Melissa Hayes always, as it calls her classroom, her family. Professional belonging. I mean, Mandy, you talked about it in the beginning, this whole idea of teachers, educators feeling that they have that sense of belonging. And so that professional belonging is, how do we grow it? We talk about self-care, but what does that look like? How do we end up helping ourselves feel empowered? How can we sort of reclaim that? And then some personal reflections from amazing educators who contributed to the book. And then finally, how do we leave a legacy? How do we model becoming a good ancestor? And so there are lessons like Peace and Justice lesson by Bhavna Matthew. By the way, that the educators are international, so I have educators from all over the world who contributed. And then something like Building Your Brand, a Canadian educator, Justin Nolan, contributed that one. And that could be used with students, but it also can be used with educators. Yeah. And then the book has additional sections of belonging and project-based learning. As I mentioned, the asset-based approach and inclusive practices for language learners. So all really important stuff that I wasn't able to put into the first book. And I wanted to be able to, so you pick up the book and you say, oh, I can use some of these things. And it's filled with QR codes. and links to amazing additional resources for each of the lessons that are in there, and also an additional Wakelet collection of resources for those who purchase the book.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely like chock filled with stuff, with like everything that has to do with belonging, and again, like some of those identity things as well, like branding. I've done branding stuff with leadership. You know, with like how are you being perceived? That's your brand. Like whether you like it or not, that is how you are perceived, is how you're currently branding yourself. So you know, that stuff is important for not only belonging but identity. And again, like we've said, they're so intertwined. And when we talk about you know, I think like one of the interesting things that our culture that seems to be going into, particularly with women, is this idea that we don't need anybody. We need to be happy on our own. And I agree with that. We do need to be happy with ourselves and all of that. But we find ourselves through belonging. We find ourselves through connection with others. Sure. And so like saying that we need to be happy on our own is actually kind of dangerous, because we do need to be happy on our own, but we do that through others. And so I love how the book really combines things like, you know, like gratitude, which is helping our human, but we're helping our human to be able to connect and belong with others. And so that's really so much of what the book has. And I mean, there's just a ton of stuff like Ilene just talked about. So so if you had to say who is the audience for the book, if you had to like dial that in?
I would say every single person who considers themselves an educator in the world, probably parents also who are really interested in this whole idea of what is social emotional learning and this sense of belonging. What does it mean and why is it so important? Obviously, the connection to the fact that belonging is a human need, and that sense of connection that you just mentioned, Mandy, which is so important. Yes, I can feel happy being alone, that I don't feel lonely, but I need human connection. I thrive on human connection. Everybody, you talked a couple of minutes ago about dysregulation. We need co-regulation. Yeah. Even babies need co-regulation in order to feel that sense of calm and when there are things that are going wrong in the world. So yes, it's important for that connection. And so the audience is mostly for educators, but I would say even for parents who are curious about it, want to do activities at home with their children, or just want to have an idea of what are we talking about when we say the sense of belonging or social emotional learning, and why is it important? Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of resources that are in the book itself. We have the QR codes, we have the Wakelet piece with additional resources. What is your website and where can people find you? Sure. Really easy. All my social media is at Ilene Winokur. And as you have there, my new website, which is about 6-8 months old, is ilenewinokur.com. Also, link to pre-order the book, because the book will be live on, well, here's the launch today. So you can go ahead and order it right away. And also you'll find A Journey to Belonging, Pathways to Wellbeing, my first book, if you'd like to order them together. Yeah, absolutely, which I highly recommend because I love the first book as well. And so EduMatchers, if you are thinking that you might want to order a bunch of these books, you can do that. You can do that with a bulk discount. We give a discount only on 10 books. Like all you have to order is 10 books before you get the discount. It's not very many at all. And so if you're thinking about PLCs or you're thinking about a book club, this might be the perfect time to do that.
So for a discount on bulk orders, you can contact Dr. Sarah Thomas at edumatchbooks@edumatchers.org. You can, of course, find all of EduMatch's books and Ilene's amazing 2 books that she has, both Journey to Belonging and Pathway to Belonging, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and www.edumatchpublishing.com. My tongue's having some issues today. And you can find it in all the places that books typically are. And so Ilene, Dr. Winokur, you're Ilene to me. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please. Yes. No formalities between us.
Congratulations on your launch. I'm so happy for you that this book is out there. It's well needed. And you know how I feel about that. I am 1000% your biggest fan. So please go out and buy her books today so you can become her biggest fans too. Thank you, EduMatchers. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Mandy. Then thank you, EduMatchers.